Hi, good morning. We have about 56 of the over 90 people that subscribe to join us this morning. I see more people popping on now. We're going to get started, and we'll allow folks to catch up as they come online. Good morning. Thank you for joining us for today's discussion of New Jersey's Clean Energy Program incentives for small businesses, local government and school buildings, and commercial industrial companies. After we have a presentation of the Clean Energy Program, we'll have 3 case study examples of how the clean energy programs were used and the efficiencies and savings benefits as a result. I'm Jane Aselta, Vice President of the Southern New Jersey Development Council, and I'm pleased to be moderating today's program. First, we hope you, your family, and your work family are all safe and healthy. We here at the Development Council, a nonprofit government affairs and economic development advocate, established nearly 70 years ago, continue to work on behalf of our members, the business communities in the southern 8 counties of New Jersey, by providing timely access to information on resources and initiatives that impact the business community. That includes today's webinar, as well as in 2 weeks, our virtual meeting with DEP Commissioner Catherine McCabe, where she'll give an update on issues ranging from regulatory reform to reduce emissions and adapt to climate change, the build out of electric vehicle infrastructure, concerns with water quality and funding water infrastructure investment, as well as the application of the governor's recent executive orders that granted deadline and permit extensions. So that'll be quite a conversation. You can join us to register for the May 21st virtual meeting at snjdc.org. I want to first thank New Jersey Clean Energy Program, DCO Energy, Greyhawk, and Hutchinson Mechanical Services for your sponsorship and your assistance in today's program. After we hear from each, we'll have approximately 10-15 minutes at the end for questions and answers. And I ask that you submit your questions through the GoToMeeting Q&A feature. We'll be recording the webinar, and we'll share the links to the replay as well as to the download the presentation. I would like to introduce our speakers. First, we'll hear from Gary Finger, who administers the Clean Energy Program for the state of New Jersey and is responsible for outreach and education to public and private sector entities that need assistance in energy-related issues. Gary will walk us through the clean energy portfolio of programs. We'll then hear from Ed Hutchinson, President of Hutchinson Mechanical Services, a leading energy and mechanical service contractor performing new construction and retrofit installation work in the greater tri-state region. Ed has received state and national recognition for sustainable initiatives and will share how the direct install program has helped 2 of his clients. Brian Lavin is the Senior Director of Business Development at DCO Energy, an independent energy development company specializing in the development, engineering, construction, startup, commissioning, operation, and maintenance and management of energy facilities. Brian will discuss ESIPs, which allow local governments and school districts to fund capital infrastructure programs through energy savings. And last, we'll learn from Rob Dinan, the partnership among design and construction firms helped a school achieve operational efficiencies and attain the highest rebate possible from the Smart Start program. Rob has more than 20 years of professional construction management experience and is a project executive at Greyhawk, an award-winning construction management and consulting firm that provides comprehensive construction consulting services. And with these introductions, I'm pleased to turn the program over to Gary, Ed, Brian, and Rob. We'll each give remarks, and then we'll return for a Q&A session to answer your questions. And with that, I'll turn it over to Gary.
Thank you, Jane. I appreciate the opportunity to give this presentation this morning, and I appreciate everybody's time logging in and seeing what we can do to help you out. For some reason, I do not actually have the presentation up, but I'm going to go through it. Does anybody else see the presentation, I hope?
Not yet, Gary.
Okay, I need some technical support here. I am not getting control. I apologize for that.
Gary, if you'd like, what we can do is go back to Jane and then she can move through the slides for you, if that works.
If you can do that, it might be the easiest way to do it because I don't really want to delay any time if possible.
Okay, Jane, I've handed this back over to you. There we go.
Gary, your first slide is up.
Okay, on the next slide, I'm just going to briefly go over what the process would be under using this particular format. If you have questions, there is a chat tab that you can type in your questions. Those will display so that the moderator will be at the end of this program, be able to ask any questions that you may have during the course of this program. So that just kind of gives you a little bit of the basics. On the next slide, when we talk about our array of programs, so we've got the New Jersey Clean Energy Portfolio of Programs. We'll cover everything, and I'm not going to go into detail of all of these, but everything from renewable energy, individual rebated items. We have residential programs. We also do distributed energy resources, which should be on-site generation. So I always like to tell people, if it uses electric or if it uses gas, we have money in the programs to help support those programs. So the next slide, we start to talk a little bit about community solar, which is a relatively new initiative by the Board of Public Utilities. It's actually administered by the Board of Public Utilities. This is an opportunity for those areas within utility territories to participate with solar projects where historically they couldn't. So there is a subscription mechanism in place, but from a development standpoint, this provides a tremendous opportunity for development within every region in the state of New Jersey. So that's something that's exciting, that's been being developed on an ongoing basis. The next slide, we're talking about really the portfolio of programs within the C&I program. And what I am going to do, the next one, there you go. Whoop, keep going. Two more. So the way that these programs are working, this should be slide number 9 that I'm on, and I apologize again. This is the full array of programs. Slide number 10, if you can go to. And what we're doing, just to talk about it, there you go. So we do have measurement and verification programs, comprehensive programs such as a full building approach, the SMART or the single measures. So again, what I want you to see and be aware of on this particular slide is we have enhanced incentives that are in place right now. Enhanced incentives mean if you happen to be in an area which is an opportunity zone, or a UEZ, or if you're a school district, local government, or county government, we have additional enhanced incentives. So in some cases, they are doubled what we currently have under the single rebate measures. If we're under some of the packaged programs that I'll talk about in a minute, which would be like direct install, pay for performance, those enhanced incentives also apply to those programs as well. So it's an opportunity to take advantage of. These are in place through the end of our fiscal year. Right now, our fiscal year ends June 30th. There are some discussions if that may change, but we'll certainly keep everybody posted. We hope that they'll continue into next year. So the next slide, we'll start briefly talking about the benchmarking program. Benchmarking is a free program. All we need is 12 months worth of energy bills, and we can provide a oversight of what your operations look like compared to other sectors. The nice thing about this program is that you're entered into the portfolio manager, Energy Star portfolio manager, so that you can see a constant record. If you input your data on a regular basis, how do you compare with other like-sized buildings in your sector? Are you being efficient, inefficient? And quite frankly, it tells you whether or not somebody else is more competitive than you are, which is not a good thing to know. Beyond benchmarking, the next free program that we provide is a local government energy audit on slide number 12. This is also a free service that we provide. This service is we give an ASHRAE level 2 audit. We are looking at your basic building requirements. In most cases, a public sector building is the sectors that we're certainly looking at, as well as nonprofits. We're looking at everything from a building envelope on in. So it's lighting, building shell, we're looking at electrical, we're looking at any gas, we're looking at water distribution systems. This becomes the first step to what Brian's going to be talking about during the course of his presentation. So we're doing an evaluation of all the current equipment that you have. It's all put together very neatly in a report to make the recommendations to you as to what you would receive for incentives, how much energy savings is potentially yours, what the payback period would be under those programs. We do that on the audit basis is based upon the single measure rebates, because design programs, there's a lot more involved in that. But that's a great starting point because it tells you there's even more money that's available if you take the next step. We do look at evaluating the potential for renewable. So if you want to include that as well, we will also consider whether or not you are a candidate for CHP as part of that report. So it's a great report. You have not made any commitment when you've done that report, although we strongly encourage you to do so. But it is an excellent tool to start with. Right now, we are actually performing virtual audits in many locations. That we need certain qualifications, but it affords us the opportunity to go in virtually through the use of a facility manager and get the process started, which will work quite nicely, quite frankly. The utility bills are certainly something we need up front. So, but we'd like to get you into that pipeline. So if you've got facilities that you're considering, let's have that conversation because we think there's a lot more that you can do. Moving forward, the single measure rebates on the next slide are essentially that, they're rebates. We're looking at everything from lighting to chillers to HVAC and everything in between. Those incentives are quite rich to begin with. They're all single measure rebates, as we like to say. If you are in the zones that I'd mentioned before, opportunity UEZ, school districts, or local government, those incentives are all doubled. So that is a very rich incentive. In some cases, we'll cover up to 100% of what the rebate or the ECM cost would be. So that's something to keep in mind. I would love to see you act on that sooner than later. The next slide, it's a little bit about what the Smart Start program is, what the qualifications are. It's a very rich program. We'll cover up to $500,000 for each gas and electric account. And with that, we can get a lot done. The next slide is going to give you an example with Ocean County College of how this program actually worked. In their particular case, we used lighting upgrades and exterior LED wall packs. As you can see, the project cost wasn't significant. For $7,700, they got $6,000 back in incentives. But look at the payback period, 3 months. That is phenomenal. And the annual savings continues as pure profit beyond that. So, you know, when you do these projects, keep in mind the long-term gain that you would have available. Moving beyond that, you say, all right, I really want to look at more of a building approach. So we have a comprehensive list of programs, large energy users, and these would be users who have a tremendous energy supply. We're usually looking at several $1 million worth of energy costs per year. We'd love to talk to you individually about that. Performance-based contracting, direct install, and a custom tailored program. On the next slide, a little bit about the custom tailored program. What we're doing is to take each application measure that we have available through Smart Start, and we're saying, all right, put all those on one application. That's really what this program is, essentially. The rebate levels are still going to be the same as what they would be under Smart Start. We do provide technical assistance where you may want it. It's strictly optional, but if we can help you through the process, that's what we try to do. The direct install program, I'm just going to touch on the next slide. This is, as Jane pointed out, this is an award-winning program, nationally recognized. We've probably had over 9,000 participants in this program since its inception. We're looking at an average demand load, which is a basic qualification of 200 kW. What that really means to most businesses is, quite frankly, 90% of the buildings in the state of New Jersey qualify for this program. It is packaged. And I know Ed Hutchinson is going to go into a lot more detail on this. What you need to know, though, from my perspective, is the incentives, even if you're not a school district and not a government facility, if you're not in a UEZ, we're going to cover up to $125,000 of incentive cost on that. If you are one of those other public sector buildings, those incentives cap is doubled. And that is something worth speaking about. Next slide. we talk about the percentage covered. Yes, we will cover 70% of up to 70% on the project cost. If you are a UEZ or school district, we're going to cover up to 80% of the project cost, which is a great thing to know. That's not the slide, but that's okay. Hold that slide anyway. I'm going to be right into that. So what you need to know under direct install, the contractors have been vetted through the state of New Jersey. They're already pre-qualified. So Ed Hutchinson certainly is one of them that covers many of the counties in South Jersey. And it keeps the process extremely simple going through it. So I want you to keep that in mind, that talk to us as a program manager will certainly help you determine what's the best route for you. You say, all right, Gary, I'm larger than a 200 kW. What does that mean? Well, maybe you're a grocery store, a distribution center. That's fine. We have pay for performance, which does, we're looking at a building envelope approach. The incentives are not up to 80% or 70%, but we're looking at up to $1 million per account. That's gas and electric. So there's a little bit more required. You need to reference one of the trade allies that have been approved through the system. You can become one as well, but the difference is there's modeling that's involved. And we are looking at, you need to produce an energy reduction plan before you can move forward. That's something that I know that Brian may also be touching on as well. Installation of measures, you get your first incentives on the energy reduction plan, then the installation. Third incentive comes in when the measurement and verification comes through, which is a year later. This is a terrific example. This is a multifamily project that was started. You can see what the measures were that they've done with lighting upgrades, boiler replacement, air seals installation. $1.5 million project, they got over $300,000 in incentives. Again, look at what their savings and their payback is on this. It's a real easy, I don't want to say it's an easy justification, but the reality is the payback is very rich on that. And just as another note, it applies to direct install as well as pay for performance. Depending on the territory you're in, the utility companies also may provide additional financing available. In the case of some of Ed's territories, we can work through South Jersey Gas. They provide 0% financing for 3 years. We can do the same thing under pay for performance as well, that there is financing available through some of the utilities. That's something we take on a project by project basis. As we start looking on the next slide, where we'll just kind of briefly talk about distributed energy resources. This covers combined heat and power, fuel cells, microgrid development, battery storage certainly is something you're going to be hearing a lot more of going down the road. It's not quite ready yet, but it is part of the energy master plan, and we want that to be an extremely important component. As you do solar arrays, batteries become rather significant. Electric vehicles, there are 2 programs for that right now. One of those programs is the offsetting cost for the electric vehicles themselves, and the other is an offsetting cost for doing electric charging stations. We incorporate this in our conversations very commonly because when we start talking to municipalities or county improvement authorities where they are involved in downtown redevelopment areas. All right, let's take a look at how we can put in charging stations to make that even more palatable for somebody to come into your restaurant row or your downtown area. You see a lot of the beach communities using them these days, and it does draw more people. More people have electric vehicles, so it only makes sense. The next slide I'm going to only very, very briefly talk about because it's the energy saving. That's an example of how combined heat and power works. Just so you know, this is one extreme. Combined heat and power, this is on-site generation. What they're doing is taking a fuel source, which in most cases is the natural gas, runs a turbine, produces electricity, then they put the heat back in the system. That's what makes it combined heat and power. This is a short payback period. Although it's estimated, usually the payback period might be a little bit longer than that, but the potential is there. You don't have to be a large hospital facility to take advantage of CHP. The requirement is you need 5,000 run hours. We can do this in restaurants, and we have done it in restaurants. Stephen Cookies is always one of my favorites. They're in Margate. She's got a really nice 20 kW micro turbine that powers her operation. She's never been without power. It's a nice model to look at. So if the technology is beyond what you're normally understanding, that's where we come in and we can help talk to you about that, as well as the additional presenters. So on the next slide, all I'm going to really touch on momentarily is the Energy Saving Improvement Program. This is a financing mechanism that is under the umbrella of the Board of Public Utilities, but it allows these larger projects to take place in the public sector. It could be school districts, municipalities, counties, and they can do a lot of work under this umbrella, and really there's no out-of-pocket expense because they must be cash positive by statute every single year. And that really affords a lot of creative thinking as to how you're going to get these projects done, especially now when you have a lot of unknown going forward. But you certainly do know that you've got facilities that need to have work done. So we're certainly looking at concerns that particularly school districts have with their classroom environments. And that's something that can be addressed during that ESIP process. The ESCOs will certainly take a look at that. And this is also a good time to get those projects moving because with the classrooms being empty right now, and they certainly will be until the school year starts up, a lot of work can get done in a very short period of time. And that's something that works out well for the ESCOs and contractors that don't have to worry about the scheduling quite as much. So that's a quick overview. I know, again, Brian wants to talk a little bit more about that. It was a lot of information I gave in a very, very short period of time, but certainly my contact information will be available. I encourage anybody to make a phone call. I will talk to you about the programs. We can go into more detail. I am going to now turn the program over to Ed Hutchinson, who operates Hutchinson Heating and Cooling, covers most of the southern New Jersey area as an assigned contractor, and has been doing this since the program's inception. So at that, Ed, I'm going to turn this over to you and let you talk about some of the success stories that you have had.
Hi, thank you, Gary. Like Gary said, Ed Hutchinson reporting down here in sunny Avalon, New Jersey, finally having beaches open for the first time today. So welcome to the program. As Gary said, the direct install program is DI, as we refer to it. It's a pretty robust program inside the Office of Clean Energy for commercial and industrial type programs. I'm going to go through a couple of quick steps before getting to the actual case studies. I just want to reiterate some of the things that Gary was talking about. And like I said, the commercial properties, 200 kW and below. And like Gary said, that is most of the properties in New Jersey. Things to keep in mind is that the program pays 70 or up to 70, in case of some government and opportunity zones, up to 80% of the total cost of the program. It includes energy efficiency measures such as lighting, HVAC, refrigeration, and water conservation. So, turnkey process. What's that mean? Turnkey means that you have one contact, which would be one of your participating contractors, of which Hutchinson is one. And quite frankly, we try to reiterate this. It's 6 very easy steps. You contact us, we do an assessment, we review the results, you sign the scope of work, we install the measures, you verify the installation, and you basically sign off. And Gary talked to you a little bit about the financing. We handle all the capital costs, which means you don't have to put up any cost of the 70 or 80%. The rebates actually come to the contractors. So your responsibility is the 30 or 20%. And it can be with proper financing with some utility companies like New Jersey Natural Gas and South Jersey Gas in those territories that could be totally cash, no cash out of pocket. So you need to keep that in mind. Going through the particular case studies, you have the number one here is Ripley's Believe It or Not. I kind of picked that because that is local to Atlantic City. It's summertime. And another big reason is that they have over 400 exhibits there, about 50,000 customers a year, and they have lots of lighting and lots of HVAC in use. In that picture, you see Chris Conley in the middle, along with my nephew, Michael, and Pete Hatton on the right-hand side who runs our commercial programs. So if you take a look, it's relatively simple what we do. We go into a particular case. There's rooftop units, which you obviously can't see here, that are providing the HVAC. Have high efficiency analysis, took a look at what they have, went in, replaced all their lighting to high efficiency LED lighting, and replaced the rooftop units over there. You'll see it was about a $70,000 project. The incentives paid about $45,000, about 65%, and they're saving almost $11,000 a year in savings. 78,000 kWh, 561 therms of gas, and 58 metric tons of carbon savings. So all in all, a pretty prolific program. I'm sure they would be dying to get their facility open in the very, very near future when people hopefully get back to the Jersey Shore. Jane, the next panel, please. Phasal architecture. The reason I pulled this one in particular is that they are one of the projects that is really, really coming alive in the city of Camden. They have a beautiful old building they renovated, and prior to that, we were able to come in there and do some HVAC replacement and total lighting replacement. Again, approximately a $70,000 project. Again, the annual savings about $5,000, 26,000 kWh of electricity, and 1,447 therms gas, 26.3 metric tons of carbon reduced. So they are a couple of the projects. I tried to keep this running. Smooth time. You know, that the tape that you see there with Camden and with the very, very similar to what we see across the board. The likelihood of getting to 70% is very, very high. And quite frankly, the 80% for those government and the UEZ zones. So if you want to learn more, you go to hutchbiz.com commercial or visit the New Jersey Clean Energy website. Thanks all. Ladies, have a great Mother's Day. And now I'm going to hand off to Brian Lavin of DCO Energy. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Ed. Appreciate that. I'm going to build on what Gary Finger was speaking a little bit about on the Energy Savings Improvement Program, what we call ESIP in New Jersey. If you want to advance to the next slide. So ESIP it came about in 2009, legislation was introduced. What it is a program that allows public entities, school districts, county governments, local governments to finance large capital infrastructure projects through the energy savings that they produce. So they are financed over a term of 15 or 20 years, 20 years in the case where a combined heat and power is included in the project. The great part about this program is that there is no capital outlay by the public entity. It's fully financed through the energy savings. I'll get into that a little bit more. And there's three models, three contracting vehicles on the way to implement an ESIP project. You can advance the slide. The first traditional route is the ESCO model, wherein public entity puts out to bid a predetermined, it's a template from the BPU of an RFP. The way that process works is they put out the RFP, ESCOs will come in, walk the sites, they present their RFP response to the public entity and is evaluated on based on fee, based on the projections of energy savings. But what they're actually awarding isn't a dollar figure. They're just they're selecting a partner to develop an energy savings plan. What that plan does is it captures the entire scope of the project, from lighting to a solar PPA, whatever the project may end up being. And with that plan, at that point, there's no capital outlay. And so the public entity has made no commitment to spend any money. They can stop at any time. But once that plan is approved, the entity has the option to go out and finance the project and implement it. So that's the traditional ESCO route. The hybrid route is where the public entity will take on will contract with their architect or engineer of record to guide them through the process of the ESIP program. And that engineer will also produce the plans and design for the ESCO to implement. The third way is do it yourself. Now this model a lot of times is for smaller projects, less than $2 million or so, where architects and engineers will do everything on their own. They will develop the energy savings plan and they will bid it out themselves. If you want to go to the next slide here. So what does that look like? I say it's no cost out of pocket. What does that mean? It's not some magical thing here. Basically, let's break it down to say, simplify it to say your energy spend was $1. We could usually save about a third of your energy costs. Now, that third is taken away from your payments to the, whether it be PSE&G, New Jersey Natural Gas, whoever it may be. You're no longer making the payments to them. It is then subsidized, and that third is used to pay a loan amount. That loan is either coming from refunding bonds or a capital lease. So basically, you're already paying this $1. Why don't you get something for it? Instead of paying that full amount to the utility, you're actually leveraging the savings so that you actually get new equipment, new lighting, roofing, whatever it may be. Next slide, please. So what do these ECMs, as we call them, what are they? I mean, a lot of times we have a solar PPA these days. They are very lucrative right now. We actually bid out a solar PPA the other week, and we got a rate of 1 cent a kilowatt hour. It's really great. In addition, you've heard a couple, from Ed on the direct install program, and you heard a little bit about the pay for performance program. Those are not mutually exclusive from the ESIP program. They are very much incorporated into it. We tap into every resource, every rebate, every incentive we can find in the state, including direct install and pay for performance. We work with Hutchinson all the time on many projects to include that, to leverage the savings that DI can provide into a larger ESIP project to make sure that we tap into every resource possible for the entities. As you can see, those pay for performance and combined heat and power incentives are lucrative, and we want to make sure we tap into that. You can advance to the next slide. So really, this is the process for how it works, and I'll go through this real briefly. I don't want this to be a read along here. You select your partner. They develop the energy savings plan. You will solicit financing, and just like the entities are used to, they publicly bid out these contracts so that there's real transparency to everyone. After that, you implement and verify the savings. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rob at Greyhawk.
Thank you, Brian. So the next few slides, thank you for having me. And next few slides, I'm going to talk about a case study at the Willingboro School District. Little bit of background. Greyhawk has been working with the Willingboro School District as their construction manager and the mechanical commissioning agent since 2010. For this particular project that we worked with them, the team consisted of myself, Remington Vernick Engineers, Tri-State HVAC, were the manufacturers for the Daikin chillers which we installed. Next slide, please. So basically, it was a traditional design, bid, build procurement method. The project consisted of demolition of existing equipment, their high school works off a plant type of system. Their cooling consisted of a chiller with a cooling tower heat exchanger, which was also supplemented by a direct fired gas absorption unit. All of this equipment was old. Since 2012, when we did a major project at their high school, we were able to refurbish some of that equipment, and it was maintained up until this past summer of 2019 when we actually did the project. The school district had been talking to us for several years since 2012-2013 project at the high school. They just were biding up enough time to get the resources to actually implement this project. Next slide, please. So in doing the project, we evaluated various products and systems. How were we going to get the best efficiency, and what would be the possible rebate? We did not want to go back with a like replacement. So we decided to go with 3 air-cooled recip chillers. The reason we went with 3 is because they're actually looking to expand part of their building. So they wanted to take advantage and basically have that capacity now built into this project, so that way they could use it into the future. Next slide. So cooperation and collaboration. We originally did not start off thinking that we were going to use the clean energy program and the rebates available. However, the team came together after we were about a month into the project, after submittals were done, and said we can really take advantage of this project, especially, as Gary mentioned, the enhanced incentives. Since it is a K through 12 school district, we get double the cost. So what we did to make sure that all of our I's were dotted and T's were crossed, we solicited a company called Square K Energy, and what their forte is assisting clients in managing the rebate process. So they were instrumental in streamlining the process with respect to filling out all the applications, communicating with the various agencies, scheduling the inspections. Next slide, please. So at the end of the day, you see the Price is Right check here, and the team there is myself in the middle, along with Ed Shishan from Tri-State. To the far left, the tallest gentleman is Chad Moore of Square K Energy, and to my left, the picture on your right, is Jeff Riggs, who's the Director of Mechanical Commissioning for Greyhawk. And the so what is the next slide. $289,536 of rebate, which was 34% of the overall project cost. So again, a great testament to using the enhanced incentive program, collaborating with all of your project partners, contractors, manufacturers, and professionals. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Jane. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you, Gary, Ed, Brian, Rob. We appreciate your presentation. We're now going to turn it over to Q&A. I had a couple of questions that had popped in, and the first one went to Gary. Person says, I'm in the middle of a project now and already submitted an application to the Clean Energy Program. Will I still be able to get the required inspections that I need in order to receive my incentives?
Great question, because there's been a lot of discussion, I guess, as to what agencies are operational and if there's been any restrictions. The short answer is yes. All applications are being processed. As a matter of fact, we've actually had record number of applications from what I just got an update on this morning. They are busy working away at processing the applications where inspections are required, and frankly, we're looking at projects that are lighting, they're certainly over $100,000. Below that, we're waiving the inspections, but we will have the ability to do virtual inspections. So in this changing climate, we are trying to adapt to what we can do to keep these projects moving as best as we possibly can. So, you know, we're doing virtual audits, as I mentioned, virtual inspections. Positively, we can do that, but we haven't, changed our internal workings, that we're processing these applications as quickly as we possibly can when they come in. And we have not done anything to furlough any of our staff. So we have a very full team operational right now.
I guess that leads to a follow-up question then. Is the funding for these programs still intact, or should we expect some kind of reduction in the program financing?
No, the good news, the great news is our programs are fully funded through the end of our fiscal year. Our fiscal year runs until June 30th. I realize that the administration has announced that they're extending the state's fiscal year until September 30th. We have not received word on if this is officially impacting our program, or if we're going to come up with an interim budget, but no, we're good. Our programs are funded. There's not even any discussions of reallocating funds, so that's a plus. But I think it's still early to determine what's going to happen going forward in the next fiscal year, whatever the fiscal year is. We recognize that these programs really can help businesses come back on track. Yes, there's an outlay in some cases, but as Ed mentioned and Brian mentioned, you can actually proceed with these programs without a cash outlay, which is really would help a business be profitable sooner. So, you know, we're going to help you. There's also additional resources. I had mentioned utility companies, but these days we work with other agencies as well. So we know EDA has some SBA monies that come and go, and they get restructured depending on how much comes in from the federal government. We are working with the EDA on these programs for assistance. We also work with federal programs such as the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Believe it or not, most areas in the state of New Jersey qualify for USDA. Could be a loan, could be a grant, and it depends on the population status. So that's one of those, as we get started with the projects and there's questions, if we have a way to tap in and bring those other sources in, it does not preclude you from working with a clean energy program, and we can go forward. One other thing I will mention on this, Jane, if I can, financing rates are extremely low right now. I know the last time I spoke with Phoenix Advisors, I was amazed at how low they are, and I haven't talked to Robbie in probably about 3 weeks, although I suspect I'll talk to her today. But you know, that impacts the projects that Brian was talking about. So when you do an ESIP project and you go out for funding, those numbers are really good to be working with right now. And I think you're going to find banks are quite reachable to provide assistance on these programs. So we're going to pool all these resources and try to get these projects moving and get people back to work.
Excellent. Thanks, Gary. Ed, someone asked for the customer's 30% share that you had mentioned, are there financing options? And I guess their follow-up question then after that is, then what are the tax concerns?
Well, as we both of us were speaking, you have the 30% is the individuals or the organization's share. In South Jersey Gas, and without being in the fine details, they will do on-bill financing for 0%, which means whatever that 30% would be, it just goes right on your bill. And I believe that is a 3-year program, but that means there would be no cash out of pocket. South New Jersey Natural Gas also has an on-bill program for 0% financing. So basically, if you go to 100, could really be in the money and be positive cash flow, you know, day one as soon as you flip the switch. So again, they did. The additional thing is when you have the programs at DI, you may want to have some additional things that that don't screen in through the direct install program, which could be done by the Smart Start program. So you can have part DI and part Smart Start. And Smart Start, when you add that in, they will finance the Smart Start piece of the money up to 5 years. So it becomes quite lucrative when you go to these programs and you get the financing piece, because I mean, you're really, in often cases, you have zero out of pocket, which is pretty prolific. The piece about the tax, now granted, you know, I'm a mechanical contractor and an energy services guy, so please don't come to Ed Hutchinson and tell the IRS Ed Hutchinson told you so. Okay, but the 179D program with the federal government, the IRS, has a number of different items to it, but the most prolific, I believe, is that you can take accelerated depreciation on energy enhancements. Okay, so as opposed to have normal depreciation of 39 years, you have enhanced 1 year depreciation. So everything we're sitting here talking about, not just the direct install program, but all these energy things are applicable for a 1 year, you know, accelerated depreciation. So that's where the IRS piece comes in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Brian, is there a minimum energy spend for an entity to be a good candidate for an ESIP?
That's a good question. Not necessarily, not by law. However, in order to really drum up interest from the other ESCOs, we'd like to see about a minimum of $250,000 on an annual basis in order to really develop a lot of interest in the project. Just to piggyback on what Gary was saying on interest rates, yeah, they are historically low. The most recent one I've seen was that the interest rate came back on a 19-year financing project for 1.9% interest rate. So it is a great time to do this. The money is cheap out there and it's easy to get. Still, even with all this, and that was through a capital lease. Refunding bonds are going to be a little bit more expensive right now, but you know, I'll defer to the financial advisors and Robbie on that one. But there we have it.
Thank you. Rob, did you find the application process and inspection of the equipment to be efficient?
Yes, it was. And, you know, we at Greyhawk, we're good at what we're good at. And when we need somebody with expertise, we go out and find it. And that's what we were able to do with Chad Moore of Square K Energy. He's the subject matter expert, as in my opinion, with respect to knowing the ins and outs of a lot of these programs if you're not in it every day. So we worked with him, and he handled everything really turnkey, and he just told us you know, when to be at the school for the inspections and who to meet, and it really streamlined the process, and the school was able to get their money probably within 6 weeks or less of final inspection of the equipment.
Well, that answered this person's next question, was what was Willingboro's payback period?
So yes, they received their rebate if that's the payback period that they're speaking of within 6
months. Wow. Okay. I think this question, I'm not sure maybe who to direct it to. I'll put it out to the group. Is there funding for the purchase of electrical industrial equipment vehicles in place of gasoline or diesel powered vehicles? Maybe that's a Gary question.
The only thing I can tell you about what I'm aware of is there are rebates right now for electric vehicles. They encourage certainly municipalities and counties to take advantage of that to start to move their fleets into the electric sector. Larger vehicles, I believe there are programs that are being discussed. Clearly, that's where the Department of Transportation is going to want to be involved. But to my knowledge, it's only on the typical fleet vehicles, and I believe that may cover some utility vehicles as well. So the funding is there. It's very, it's certainly, they're doing whatever they can to encourage people to get involved in the electric market. And that's why I love to talk about electric charging stations. And certainly with Ed being on the cloudy shores of Avalon, he knows he's got 2 of them right down on the public beach area on 30th Street right now. And they do get used. Stone Harbor, also on 7 Mile Island, has, I believe they installed 2 of them, and I've never seen them not being used. So there's a lot of activity around those. And it doesn't always have to be the public sector, by the way. It can be the private sector as well.
Well, someone had asked, and I'm not sure this group might know, what are the tariffs now used? What are the tariffs now for EV charging, and are they time of use? Gary, maybe out of the BPU, you've got
It's
some.
really a BPU question.
Right.
I can tell you right now, I'm not aware that there are any changes to the existing tariffs. So when you are charging your vehicle, you want to try to do it in the evening and you're not running from peak load. So which means when you come home, well, when you used to come home from work, now you're home all the time. That's when you want to charge your vehicles because the cost is cheaper during that time period. I'm aware that the utilities are making filings now to the BPU, and my understanding is there may be some incentives for charging electric vehicles, but I am not aware of what the details are yet. But I have no doubt that something like that will certainly be in the discussion.
Okay, thanks. Ed, someone had asked that the 70 or 80% incentives were too good to be true. How could that be?
That's interesting. Gary and I have done a lot of public presentations, and that's no, that's okay. That's okay. I remember it brings me back to a time many moons ago in the clean energy program back in the 90s, and somebody walked into my office in Cherry Hill and said they're going to change all our lighting to high efficiency lighting. They're going to do it for nothing. You know, of course we threw him out because we thought it was too good to be true. And when he finally explained himself and got back in, you know, what happens is we pay societal benefits on every utility bill, whether you're residential or commercial. And when you stop and think that somebody would come in and enhance your facility with high efficiency lighting and new HVAC, it causes pause. And when your mother used to say it's too good to be true, it can't be true. Well, in this particular situation, as Gary said, we have 9,000 clients that can attest to that it is tried and true, and it is there, and it is simple, and it is there for the taking. And once people understand, the word kind of spreads like wildfire. But I can assure you that what you're hearing today is the absolute truth. It's your money.
Kind of to piggyback on that, we did the direct install program in my own town with the Voorhees Police Station, and it was a very substantial project. It was $153,000. Obviously, at that time, the program was paying 70%, and we got 125,000, which was the cap on the program covered. So there's still a balance due. And when you looked at the financing, I actually had to convince the finance director that at the end of the day, you're going to be cash positive from day one because you're financing 0%. And over a 3-year period of time, and when you factor in the savings every month, you're cash positive instantly. So it was a little bit of convincing, but I'm more than happy to let anybody who questions that talk to the chief of police. He's very excited about it, and they've rolled it out into the fire districts as well. Great program.
Thank you.
And that's why it's got national recognition.
Next question. If a municipality has selected their ESCO partner, how soon can projects be started?
Excuse me, can you repeat that question?
Yes, if a municipality has selected their ESCO partner, how soon can projects be started?
So after they select their partner, typically an ESCO will come in and start the investment grade energy audit within a week or two of award. That investment grade audit typically takes between 8 to 12 weeks to complete the plan. Once it's completed, it has to be verified by a third party that's hired by the public entity. Once that plan has been approved, they go out for financing, which can take about a month. So overall, from selection of an ESCO to really getting engineering underway on the project, you're looking at about 6 to 9 months. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian. We have another question. We are a private nonprofit small school in our 6th year. They currently pre-K through 9th grade. We moved into a facility in Morristown, residential conversion, and just this past February, we have goals to go green, take advantage of programs to help. Where do we start?
Ed may want to chime in on this a little bit more. As soon as you said it was a conversion from residential, the first question that has to be asked is the meter. Is that meter a residential or commercial meter? Because that determines which program they would fall into. If it is commercial, even a private or a charter school are eligible for these programs, and they qualify for the school incentives, assuming they are certified through the New Jersey Department of Education. And I don't know if Ed can add anything to that or not.
It's a tricky, there's little nuances to all the programs that Gary and the rest of us have talked about today. So, the devil's in the details, if you will. There had been in the direct install program, which if it was a commercial facility, they would be able to qualify. That really could work. But again, it used to be that if you were an owner of a building, you'd had to have ownership for 12 months. That is no longer the case. You still need to have a record of at least a few months that you are paying the societal benefits piece, and if you are utilizing it as a similar type use. So that's kind of a gray area answer, but there are nuances, but there are exceptions to those nuances. So I would definitely pursue that. You can either go if they're in Morristown, they were in our territory, so they can certainly go through our office, or certainly through Gary.
Okay. Did anyone else want to chime in?
Hi, this is Rob from Greyhawk. There's probably also some programmatic nuances. They're converting, into a school that they would probably want to consider. Also with respect to the different mechanical systems, that they'd be taking advantage of it. And Ed said it perfectly. There's that's the key word, I think, with this person's particular situation: nuance. Making sure they get the right fit.
Excellent. Thanks, Rob. We're coming up on noon, so I'm going to finish with this last question. This question is for customers in Vineland. Are they eligible for these programs since they are served by Vineland Electric, a municipal electric utility?
It's another very good question that we get on a very regular basis. I mentioned earlier off in my presentation that, and I think it was reiterated by Ed, that what supports these programs are charges on your utility bill called societal benefit charge. Vineland is a separate authority, meaning they do not pay into the electric component for the societal benefit charge. Therefore, they're not eligible for these programs. However, they are eligible for the gas component. So they do pay a small portion. They can take advantage of any gas measures that we have. They can actually take advantage of audits. We will do that as well, as we just recently did with the Vineland School District. So, but when it comes to the incentives, we can only carve out that which is applied to the gas component. Okay.
Well, thank you. For those of you who, I think we had 1 or 2 questions that we might not have gotten to, we'll look to circle back via email and try and answer your questions offline. But I wanted to, again, thank everyone for joining us. This concludes our webinar presentation. We'll prepare a recording, like I said, of today's seminar, and there'll be a link in an email to you. There'll also be a link for you to download the slide deck. Thank you again to Jim Friedel and Gary Finger at New Jersey Clean Energy Program, Ed Hutchinson at Hutchinson Mechanical Services, Brian Lavin at DCO Energy, and Rob Dinan over at Greyhawk. We appreciate your participation and your support in today's presentation. For more information about the SNJDC, you can visit our website at snjdc.org. We wish you a good health and speedy economic recovery. Thanks, and have a great afternoon. Be well.
Have a good day, all.
Thanks, everybody. See y'all.
Thank you.